you till the heaven stops the rain. I'm gonna love you till the stars fall from the sky for you and I'm gonna love you till the heaven stops the rain. I'm gonna love you till the stars fall from the sky for you and
Happy Sunday, everybody. Happy Memorial Day weekend from Geezerology on YouTube. I'm Scott here in hot, humid South Florida. We have a couple of Missourians with us today where I hear it's pretty cool and a little bit rainy maybe, but Bob's in Kansas City, in the Kansas City area, and our new friend, who's an old friend, Dan Oliver, out there in St. Louis area. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Scotty?
We're good. So that was Jim Morrison and the Doors in December 1968 with their hot new single "Touch Me" off of their album "The Soft Parade," which would be released in July of 1969, a few months after that clip. But we're going to talk about that record today to continue our discussion of the Doors discography. But before we get into that, Bob, do you have anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I got a little thing, little something that I read earlier in the week. It seems that Robert Plant, lead vocalist for Led Zeppelin, amongst other accomplishments in his life, is apparently sitting on a trove of unreleased material. And he has told his heirs that upon his passing from this mortal coil, that he wants all of that material released free to the public at no charge. So I don't know whether this stuff is good or bad or what, but that's going to be Mr. Plant's gift to humanity when he leaves. Not wishing him an early departure at all, but it will be interesting to see what he's going to give us. And I know that will be something that you would look at with great anticipation, Scott, considering your feelings for Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, he can give it away all he wants to, but you know, I'm not taking it.
Oh,
if he wants to pay me to listen to it, then I will. But yeah.
You're just reinforcing, Scott, that you're still a heathen and a barbarian.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hate to be that way, but I'll be the contrarian of the bunch. So Robert Plant's voice to me is just it's fingernails on blackboards.
It's hard to listen to Robert's voice. I mean, there's a couple tracks, okay, you know, but yeah, it's a little too shrill for even me at times.
Oh wow! I thought I was the only person on the planet who
No,
who felt
I don't.
that way.
I don't have any Led Zeppelin recordings at all. No, I'm pretty sure I don't.
All right, Dan, I take back that welcome I gave you earlier.
No, I'm saying I think their first LP with a whole lot of, you know, it definitely had some good stuff to it, but
No.
yeah. Anyway, I don't want to bang on Robert Plant, you know, right now. So
Yeah, I actually bought their third album when it came out because I did like Whole Lot of Love. You know, I heard that on the radio all the time and a little bit, and all my friends were into it. So I picked up Led Zeppelin 3, and it was okay. You know, I didn't hate it, but it wasn't one of my favorite things ever. But more with Led Zeppelin is that just this momentum built up from there and just kept going, and it just has gone on for decades. It's like it's you know they've become like I don't know, they've been elevated to this status that I never did understand. And then the fact now that you turn on classic rock radio and every other song is a Led Zeppelin song, it's like, enough of this, enough. I've heard as much Led Zeppelin as I ever want to hear. You know? But
well,
you're a big fan though, Bob, right?
Pardon me?
You're a big fan though, right?
Yeah, I do like Led Zeppelin, although I will confess that I could live the rest of my life without hearing Stairway to Heaven again.
Yes.
That one is definitely overexposed. But no, I like Zeppelin.
Okay.
I'm not a fanatic, but yeah, I like Zeppelin. And I think Robert Plant's got a great vocal range, but I'm obviously in the minority here, but it's all friendly things. So.
Well, that's really odd. That's really odd. Three people here, and you're in the minority that you like Robert Plant, because I thought 99.99999% of people were big Led Zeppelin fans. But good. Now you only have 33% here. So
well, back in our college days, you two were always the intellectuals. So.
Oh, really?
And the avant-garde.
I'm thank you for that, Bob. I always thought I was teetering between a combination of I don't know, Alice Cooper and a drunk Lester Bangs or something.
Well, the fact that you know who Lester Bangs is gives you some intellectual creed.
Well, I read the reviews back in the day, and I guess Rolling Stone, and there was a couple other publications that his stuff appeared in, and he would just take you on he'd start out with a review and take you on a totally different ride during that anyway. So
remember Cream magazine? I remember I used to subscribe to Cream magazine.
I still have.
I don't know if he owned that or if he I don't remember, but he was the star of Cream magazine.
I've got an old copy of Cream. Of course, it's buried in a couple boxes downstairs right now. But, yeah, the Cream
magazine. Bob, anything else?
No, I think that's about all that I saw this week that I thought that caught my eye.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on. And I'm going to start our Doors discussion with the reason that we're actually here right now.
When I was back there in seminary school, there was a person there who put forth the proposition that you can petition the Lord with prayer. Petition the Lord with prayer. Petition the Lord with prayer. You cannot petition the Lord with prayer.
And that, to me, is where it all started. I was back in I think it was the summer of 1970. Well, this came out this would have had to have been this came out in July of '69, but I was in I remember I was in driver's education class for the summer, so this would have had to been the summer of 1970 when I first heard this. But Dee, I think you were there the first time I ever heard this. At the time I was I was still a fan of Top 40, listening to Tommy James and Steppenwolf and the Three Dog Night and all that. And I recall sitting in somebody's room. I don't remember if it was just you and me. I don't remember if there were two or three other people present. Ron Haynes may have been there. I don't remember. But somebody brought along this record and put this record on, and I was mesmerized by the sound of this. I knew Touch Me, and I was mesmerized by the sound of this. And then I heard that. This kid brought up as a Southern Baptist, going to church every Sunday, and still thinking of the ways of the Lord and the ways of Satan and everything. And I hear this, and it sent shivers through my brain. And after this changed everything. After this, everything changed as far as at least as far as my music listening goes. This changed everything. This really opened my brain.
Yes, Scott, I'd have to say that was probably me that brought that album over at that time. I didn't own too many albums because I didn't have too much money, but the way I procured that album was a set for another story. But
Well, tell it.
tell it.
Yeah.
It's a little embarrassing. I just chalk it up to let Bob know that I just chalk it up to
Oh, okay.
the soft
Okay.
parade was Purloin, but I chalk it up to teenage
Got it. I know where you're going.
Yeah.
foolishness.
Been there, done that.
But I felt I had to have this album, and anyway,
You're gonna get it at all costs, right?
yeah, because I had heard, like Scott said, I was familiar with Touch Me, and I heard a couple other songs on an FM station that was gaining a lot of attention in St. Louis, Casey at the time. And I think I heard the Soft Parade, of course, late at night after 10 o'clock. And I thought, I've got to hear that, the full thing. And then when I heard it, I thought, this is just so different from Hello, I Love You and Light My Fire and all that. And just, as I mentioned to Bob in a little PM a while ago, I said, yeah, this is the album that pretty much wrecked me, because it did take me, and I was really got into the lyrics. Morrison's writings were always pretty evocative, but I felt like, oh man, this is this pushed me over the edge in some good ways and some obviously not so good ways.
Right. Well, yeah, you got to take the bad with the good, obviously. But yeah.
Yes. And musically, it was like, I thought the song was a series of sweeps, but that opening part was not real popular around my house when my parents heard it either.
Or mine.
But be that as it may, the whole, and it's a series of sections, I felt, the song. And, you think that, Morrison is either he's talking about a trip, obviously, of some sort, medically induced, of course. And, but I like the changes in it. It was really a different take on what we were hearing at the time. And the Soft Parade was definitely, I thought, either somebody having a nervous breakdown or just a series of different impressions, and it was stitched together by the Doors' use of the brass. And this was their most produced album, no doubt about it. So right. I think, Manzarek, and from what I read, Krieger, they enjoyed doing it because they were jazz guys, by influence and taste. And so they were all in on it. And anyway, I went a little bit too far over taking away from.
And after I heard this, I immediately went to my driver's ed class the next day, and I put out the word: anybody have a copy of this album they want to sell? and somebody, the guy who sat next to me, is somebody that Dee knows very well. I won't say his name here, but. He said, yeah, I got one. The next day he brought in a copy, and you know what? I should have pulled that out off the bookshelf to show you, because I still have that copy, and I gave him 50 cents for that album. honest to God, that I mean I'm not exaggerating when I say that changed my life. That changed my entire outlook, as just at a time when I'm just kind of entering adulthood and learning what life is all about. And this pretty much gave me a direction to follow. Now, Bob, I know you didn't. You were a couple of years out yet from that, because you've told me that you really didn't get onto the Doors until L.A. Woman came out, which was a couple of years later. So this was obviously a retrospective listen for you, right?
Right. And I first got turned on to the Doors by L.A. Woman, and I liked it enough that I went back and I picked up the debut album, and that was the one that changed my life, and that brought me full into the Doors. So after getting hooked from the debut album, then I went back and started buying everything else in the collection. And by the time I got out of high school, I had everything that they had released up to that point. So that's when I got the Soft Parade. later on. And I liked it. It's not my favorite Doors album, and I still enjoy listening to it, but it's a real departure. And there are the Soft Parade. I think the title song has some elements of the old Doors, but then they went off in a lot of directions. And Dan mentioned about it being produced. It took them 9 months to do this album, whereas all the others they'd been able to get them in the can within a few weeks. And there's a story that George Harrison came into the studio while they were recording this album, and he saw the orchestra and all the strings and everything in there, and made a comment that it looked like what the Beatles studio looked like when they were recording Sgt. Pepper's. And John Densmore later kind of admitted that, yeah, that's what we were trying to do. They were trying to do a Sgt. Pepper's in a way. So yeah, it was definitely very produced. And I think interesting, it's like Morrison seemed to be channeling his inner Frank Sinatra on this one, with a lot of crooning.
Yeah, that's the first thing that grabbed my attention on that first time I heard it was this guy's voice. And Frank Sinatra is the exact. Those are the two exact words that came into my head when I heard the opening track for the first time. Tell all the people. It's like, this sounds like Frank Sinatra singing, and for whatever reason, that just really enthralled me.
Sinatra was actually an idol of Morrison's.
Yeah.
And I've read that when the first time they went into the studio to do the debut album, Morrison was told that the microphone they were using is the same brand and model that Sinatra uses, and he was just like, enthralled by that. So yeah, he was a Sinatra fan, and I think and it shows through on this particular album.
I never heard that George Harrison story, but it occurs to me though that this came out right about the same time as Abbey Road did, right? When did Abbey Road come out about the same time?
Yeah, I think so.
And for some reason, when Dee was talking about how it was all these different pieces, different fragments put together in the title track, the Soft Parade, it occurred to me, well, you could almost think of that as their version of the Abbey Road suite, a little slightly different bent to it, but I don't know. I don't know that I've ever read that that's actually what happened with that title song, whether that was fragments put together or whether it was intentional or not. I don't know that I've ever read one way or the other on that.
Well, the stuff that I've read is making this album. They had a tough time with Morrison. His drinking had gotten to the point where he was total alcoholic.
Well, he got bored. He got bored with all the studio time. Because I was just reading that Rothschild at the time was going through the peak of his substance abuse issues, and he was a cocaine guy. And so he was just all hyper and everything. He's going, let's do another take. Let's do another take. Come on, let's try this again. Let's try this again, and get real perfected about it. And which was one of the reasons why it took such a long time. And it was one of the and Morrison was sitting around getting bored and getting frustrated, which is contributing to his drinking and his substance abuse issues during the making of this album. So it wasn't a happy time for the Doors. There's no question about that. I don't think they enjoyed this album. I am reading that that Krieger liked it because he wrote half of the songs on this album, and he wrote them for strings and horn arrangements, which is what the whole idea behind this was. To try this new thing.
My little Doors book here, has descriptions of every album and how. And
here we go.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Great minds think alike.
Yeah, yeah.
And they talk about, Krieger's songwriting on here and all the elements they brought in, and the term they use is influence indigestion.
Yeah.
He threw so many elements in there. And interesting little piece of trivia, Touch Me was originally written with the title of Hit Me. And, so the song is, come on, Dave, hit me. Don't you know that I'm not afraid? And Krieger says he was thinking of poker, of blackjack when he wrote it. And Morrison stepped in and said, no, and changed it to Touch Me, which, I think obviously salvaged that song. But
now this was the first Doors album where they gave individual songwriting credits.
Yeah. And
the first three albums were credited to the band. And an interesting thing here, exactly half of the album was written by Krieger and exactly half was written by Morrison. There are 9 tracks. 4 tracks are Krieger, written by Krieger, 4 tracks are written by Morrison, and there's 1 track where they both got songwriting credits on it. So exactly split in half, at least by title. There were 4 singles released by the album. All 4 of those singles were the 4 Krieger tracks. Touch Me, Wishful Sinful, Tell All the People, and Runnin' Blue. And the song, the one song that was co-written by the two, I can't find it, was actually a leftover from the Waiting for the Sun album. Yeah. But I don't know. Looking back on it, it definitely is my least favorite Doors album. And
Yeah.
The biggest criticism that it gets is, because it's so different, because of the production values and the horns and the strings and everything. I gotta say, on Touch Me, I think Touch Me to me is the highlight of this album. That's the best thing on this record, and the strings and the horns work perfect. And that sax solo at the end is just fantastic. But I don't know. My issue with this record is that I just don't think, overall, in hindsight, in retrospect, after becoming more educated and a little smarter about things, a little more informed. I just don't think the material here is. I think the material here is pretty weak. Besides Touch Me and Shaman's Blues, I just don't think there's any real strong material.
Yeah.
And the Soft Parade, I listen to the Soft Parade now, the title song, and to me it doesn't hold up very well at all. It just seems kind of silly and
a little overindulgent. I mean,
you
take my 15 or 16-year-old mind, and it's one thing. I think, everything that the Doors do is great, but some of the tracks like Runnin' Blue, I didn't care for that, or Easy Ride, nothing, just kind of indifferent towards those tunes. But Touch Me with the sax solo in it, and I remember in a conversation I had many years ago with somebody, and they thought that the arrangement to Touch Me was culminating in it was an erotic peak point, you might say, and you could say that, but I thought it was a great. They did open themselves up to a wider audience with that song, but I liked Shaman's Blues and Wishful Sinful. I thought that had his vocal there was, yes, it reminds you of Sinatra, kind of that baritone.
Right. Yeah, just real rich baritone.
Yes.
Very strong.
Yeah. But I mean, I hadn't listened to the Soft Parade till we talked about this a few weeks ago, and I went back to it, and I thought I felt drunk after listening to the song.
Yeah. To me, it doesn't hold up well at all. It's not if if I were today, if I were to try to if I wanted to introduce somebody to the Doors who'd never heard the Doors before, if there was anybody out there like that, and if I wanted to introduce them to them, I would just that track, even though it's the one that that just floored me when I heard it, half a century ago. Today it's almost embarrassing, it's because it's just so overdone and just kind of silly, and
I think it was self-indulgent, and they let Morrison. I think they just had a lack of quality material, and that was the result.
I agree with
of the Soft Parade.
Yeah.
They were out of songs basically, and one of the things I read was they were working on songs while they were recording it. They didn't, none of the tunes were very well rehearsed and coming in, and I think Bob mentioned earlier, the album took 9 months to record, and I think their first LP took 4 weeks.
Right. We talked. Bob and I talked about before when we were talking about some of these earlier albums, and I'm really. I really believe this now that the Doors were much more effective live band than they were a studio band, and I don't mean like live in concert, and that's a whole other thing, but like the first album in particular, and then the last two albums, which we'll get to later. I mean, those are essentially the Doors of the band getting sitting in the studio and playing the songs and committing them to tape. A couple of overdubs here and there, and a couple of second tapes here and there. But when they started really getting into the heavy studio stuff, like they started with on Strange Days, and then they did on Waiting for the Sun and the Soft Parade, they just weren't as good as that. They weren't as good at that as they were with just going in and putting it down on tape and saying, "Oh, that was good. Let's move on." Stuff where they tried to work it to death. In hindsight, it just wasn't very good.
I wonder if that was their indulgences or their producer influencing them on that.
I think it was probably the producer.
Because
it certainly wasn't Morrison. Morrison hated it. Mm-hmm. I think it was probably the producer. It might have had something to do with Manzarek. I think Manzarek might have been part of the piece of that. So I know Morrison hated it. Densmore has said that he didn't like it.
But with with L.A. Woman, when they produced that themselves. And they got back to their roots, and Morrison was obviously involved in that one,
right?
And so what I think is one of their strongest albums, other than the debut album. So that one they produced themselves, and they managed to get rid of all of those extra influences. So
right.
So this
and they just went in, like I say, they just went in and played the songs and put it on tape and moved on to the next one.
And Scott, one more this is a trivia point about the song Touch Me. You probably have come across this little bit of information, and probably Bob has too. But for years, not for years, but I would hear the song and I thought, what is he saying at the end? And then I found he's saying Stronger Than Dirt.
Right.
I go, why? Well, at the time there was, I forgot which one of the Tide clothes detergents. And I thought, what are the Doors doing putting a Stronger Than Dirt tag at the end of a great song? And turns out, at least from what I gathered, that it was Paul Rothschild. He thought it would be a nice little tag on to put, and the Doors, I guess they didn't object to it, but I thought Stronger Than Dirt.
I don't know the whole story behind it, but I think I said somebody just I guess with Morrison just did it because it's like dot 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 dot, and that's what he thought of, and so he just did that while they're recording it, and they all thought it was pretty funny, so they just left it in because it was that same 4 notes that was in the Tide commercial. Yeah. But I don't. But yeah. It's certainly it's a Doors album, so it needs to be listened to. I can't
Yeah.
I can't
I mean,
not say that,
Yeah.
but I certainly I have it at the bottom of my list now of Doors albums. But this was the one. This was the one that put me on a path. But you know, after years of listening and after years of learning and everything like that, it certainly has fallen down my list when I look at it from a critical perspective. But it's one of the albums. It's closer to my heart than just about anything else.
Yeah.
That you can imagine.
Yeah, I'd have to say same here. I mean, and I probably, there's always those LPs when we were teenagers and that we played too much. And for me, this was one of them. I kept thinking, oh, what does he mean in the song? What does he mean by those words?
Right.
As if, and then you realize, well, you have to ask Morrison, but
Right.
you take that and for what it was, and I felt like, with the exception of 3, maybe 4 songs, it was pretty regrettable. And I think it was a case of not enough Morrison and maybe, as much as I like Robbie Krieger and his style, maybe a little too much Krieger. As far as the song selection.
I just write it off as the material was just weak for the most part, because they weren't, and especially I think you can say about Krieger. I mean, Krieger was writing these songs with a process in mind, and not writing them as real heartfelt songs. You know what I'm saying? He was writing them to fit this mold that they were creating, and not writing them because he was wanting to write great songs. He wasn't writing these from the heart. He was more writing these intellectually. And I think if you put it in context of every other piece of the Doors catalog, I think you can hear that this is just it wasn't there wasn't much substance here in these songs.
Yeah, I felt that Robbie, and he probably felt the pressure. He had to come up with more songs, and I think he was writing under a deadline too.
Could have been. I mean, for whatever reason, this wasn't their normal process for coming up with material. Because you were right, you touched on it before. They didn't have any material, because they'd used up everything out of Morrison's songbook by this point, and so now that kind of put a little bit of pressure on Krieger to come up with some stuff. But you can tell.
Yeah.
One thing I have to kind of disagree with you on, Scott, when you were talking about Krieger's inspiration. I think some of the stuff that he did was personal and heartfelt, like "Love Her Madly." He wrote about his wife.
Well, I'm talking about the songs on this album.
Yeah. But interesting, we kind of disparage Krieger's songwriting, and lyrically he's no match for Morrison. But interestingly, he's responsible for some of the band's biggest commercial hits.
True.
So,
Right. But I mean, "Light My Fire" is a Krieger song.
Right.
"Love Me Two Times" is a Krieger song.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not talking about Krieger's whole career. I'm talking about the songs specifically that are on this album.
But he's definitely a Moon and June type of songwriter. And,
well, right.
Yeah. But I would point out that some little touches that Morrison throws on to Krieger's songs salvage them. Morrison was responsible for the "Our Love Is Like a Funeral Pyre" part of "Light My Fire," and he's responsible for changing "Hit Me to Touch Me," which totally, in my mind, changes that song and salvages it. So, but you got, I think Krieger's an incredible guitarist. I always thought he was underrated for his ability there. And, he did step up to the plate and come up with their material. But, Yeah, they and like you said, you're right. They went into this without having any material to rely on, and then it was so difficult to get Morrison to check in. And in the book that I was reading, Morrison was involved in a film project and was doing a bunch of poetry and stuff. So they had, and across the street from the studio was where Morrison was doing his film thing. So he was so easily distracted, from the two of them. So yeah, material wise, the album suffers, definitely.
I read, so I'm looking for it here. I can't locate it, but I read somewhere that the reason that they got individual songwriting credits on this one was because there was a line in "Tell All the People" that Morrison just hated.
The one about the guns.
The one about the guns, yeah, and Morrison, after some negotiation, he agreed to sing the line, but he didn't agree to put his name on it as a songwriting credit. So that's why they did the individual songwriting credits on this record. Whether that's true or not, or whether that's just an apocryphal story, who knows? But I did read that somewhere. I can't find it right now.
Yeah. Well, this book that Dan and I have mentions that, and that Morrison, I guess, on that one particular song, "Tell All the People," was actually concerned that it might prompt people to bring guns to their concerts. And then I guess the other thing was he thought some of the other songs were weak and didn't want people to think that he had come up with those lyrics. True or not, I don't know what the book says, but they went back to band credits after this album, didn't they? I think
with Morrison Hotel, I know they went to, it was all words and music by the Doors. Yeah. I think after this album.
I think this was the only album where they had individual credits.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I think so.
I thought they stuck this way. Let me check real quick. Morrison Hotel, I got it here. The songs are credited to. No, they're credited individually on Morrison Hotel.
Are they?
Yes. Roadhouse Blues was Jim Morrison. Waiting for the Sun, Morrison. You Make Me Real, Morrison. Peace Frog was Krieger and Morrison. Krieger didn't write anything by himself. Krieger's on here as co-credited on a handful of these songs, but Morrison is credited individually on all the songs on Morrison Hotel. On LA Woman, hold on, LA Woman, there we go. On LA Woman, LA Woman, they're all credited to the band. So they went back to that for LA Woman, but on Morrison Hotel, they stuck with individual credits. Okay, except for one cover on LA Woman, which was Crawling King Snake by John Lee Hooker.
That was an old blues tune.
Right. You Need Meat, Don't Go No Further by Willie Dixon, which was an outtake. An outtake. Anything else about Soft Parade?
I think we beat it to death.
Yeah, I think pretty much so that, the album was a real thing for Manzarek and Densmore because, as we said earlier, they were kind of jazz influenced and they wanted to try the horns and the strings. And it worked for a couple tunes, but I don't think it was going to be anything they were going to adopt, as a new element to a Doors sound going down the road. I think it was for them, it was experimental and.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it was a one-off deal. I agree with that. It's just there's a debate on whether it actually worked or not. I don't have a problem with most of it. I think it works great on Touch Me. The horns on Tell All the People are a little cringeworthy.
It was too much. That's reminding me of you would expect, maybe Sinatra or,
Yeah,
You know,
it was overdone. It could have been a little more subtle. If you've heard the 50th anniversary edition of the Soft Parade, which is on the streaming services now, and I've listened to that a few times, and a lot of these songs they have mixes of a lot of these songs stripped down to just the Doors. And the most interesting one is "Touch Me," where that sax solo is actually a Krieger guitar solo.
Yeah, Krieger re-recorded some guitar work for that, and I thought, oh, I'm not going to like it, but he made it work.
It was interesting. I mean, it's different. It's different than what we're used to hearing. You know, so it's hard to judge it now. You know, coming into it fresh, because you can't come into it fresh. It's impossible. No. because your brain doesn't work that way, right?
No.
But it's definitely worth hearing. It's definitely it's worth hearing, and I would, you know, it's interesting. I'm not going to say that it's better, but it's certainly interesting.
Yeah, and I remember now. I didn't come up with this. It was, I forgot who told me this, but regarding "Touch Me," he said, well, when the sax solo comes in at the end and with the Doors going all out of their instrumentation, he said it was either the walls of Jericho coming down or some couple in a mad thrall of sex, and they both orgasm simultaneously. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I got I guess two quick things additionally. I find it really interesting that both of you guys, this album was like, it blew you away, you know, in your younger days, and now not so much. And I think that's kind of interesting that both of you now have that reaction to it. And, you know, the debut album I loved back then and I still love today, and it still affects me the same way. And then I listened to the 50th anniversary edition and the stripped down versions. And surprisingly, I didn't like them as well as I did the studio stuff. And Rick Beato on his YouTube series, What Makes This Song Great, dissects "Touch Me." And when you listen to him take all of those elements to it, and it's really a masterful composition for a pop song. And you know, he shows how they brought in the orchestral elements and stuff, and it's really very interesting, and it made me appreciate that song in ways that I never had before.
Yeah, I have that Beato video embedded on my blog post at Geezerology.com on the Soft Parade. Was that the first blog post on Geezerology? It was either the first or second or the third. It was one of the.
I think it was your very first one, if I'm not mistaken.
It might have been. Yeah. I got that Beato video embedded on that blog post. So go to Geezerology.com and take a look. Go into the just scroll back. It's there, or do a quick search. It's there. Geezerology.com, where Bob and I have been writing since about December, I believe. Okay, well let's wrap up this discussion. I think we pretty much covered everything that we need to cover. We'll be back at some point in the next few weeks to talk about Morrison Hotel. In the meantime, Bob and I are going to take a couple of weeks in June and discuss some music that has to do with fathers. We're going to start it next Sunday with the Violent Femmes album, Hallowed Ground. And if you're trying to make that connection, what does that have to do with fathers? Go have a listen to it, and then come on back next week, and we'll talk about it. And Dee, you have an open invitation to come join us if you'd like for that next week.
Well, it all goes back to, you know, how familiar am I with the artist or the music, and
go listen to it a couple times this week, and come on back and talk about it if you'd like.
I'm familiar with the Violent Femmes, but but not the music too much.
Hallowed Ground is our second album.
Hallowed Ground, okay.
Yeah. Okay, Bob, anything else you want to bring up before we call it a day?
Real quickly, I want to welcome Dan to join us. Dan, you're a gentleman and a scholar, and there are damn few of us left.
Well, thank you, Bob. I mean, what are the odds of two guys having the same magazine? It was actually a gift, a Christmas gift a few years ago. So
I'm going to attribute it to the great minds thing, like I said earlier.
I do too. I do too. It's one of those things, but yeah, it's and I think yeah, you did real well, Scott, as far as we got into it without getting too far into the technical side of stuff. And you know, since it is one of those pivotal albums of our adolescence and teenage, it's hard to give a, you know, too critical a run of it.
Yeah. I guess I was 16 years old when I first heard this, 15 or 16. It depended. I'm pretty sure it was summer 1970, after my sophomore year in high school. But it would have had to been, because I was 16 years old. And Dee's, at that point, I knew Dee for about 7 years by that point.
Yeah, thanks to baseball and Mad Magazine. Yeah.
Well, we moved when I was in the third grade. Our family moved into the neighborhood you lived in. So I've known you since we were in the third grade, and you're a year ahead of me since you were in the fourth grade. It's good to see you again, Dee. I haven't seen you in a while.
I know. It's good. Yeah, it looks like you know, time is being kind to everybody here so far.
Hey,
And you're still a consummate liar.
Thank you, Bob. But
You're welcome.
But yeah, I would still like they say, it's to borrow a line from Lennon and McCartney. It's wonderful to be here, and it's certainly a thrill. Anyway, I could think of the latter.
Yeah,
so.
well, to borrow one more line that you've quoted pretty much ever since I've known you, is that the Soft Parade was that album where I broke on through to the other side.
Boy, nothing.
Okay, guys, thanks for joining us. Go check us out at Geezerology.com. And Bob, I'll see you definitely next week. And Dan, I hope to see you next week. Okay.
Love to have you back.
Catch you later.
Guys.
All right.
Thanks.